I'd like to thank everybody for being here this weekend at Conspiracy Con in these strange and mysterious times in which we find ourselves in this country. I want to thank each and every one of you personally for coming to this event, for being with me now, because I believe that the times we're living in is a time for solutions, and ideal in solutions, and what I present to you today, I hope to give you some more tools, not only to know who's doing what to whom, but what we can do about it. The 20th century was the time for problem think. The 21st century is a time for solution think. I would like personally to thank Victoria Jack and Brian Hall for inviting me and believing in this particular thesis, because the presentation that you're going to see tonight that I'll share with you is one of many things that I do, but it's something I've believed in for a very long time. The presentation's title is called The Hidden Persuaders, the Subversive Use of Sacred Symbolism in the Media. And it is only part of what I do, but a very important part. If we turn to the slides, we can start very quickly because there's a lot to go through. This is, of course, a compressed version of a much larger study into symbolism in general. But we don't want to be doing some big, heavy academic analyses here. We just want to keep it very topical and give you an overview of what I consider to be a psychic dictatorship in our midst. I'm concerned about what it's doing to us all, but I'm specifically concerned with what it's doing to the young. And we'll address that as time goes by today. We're going to be talking about advertising and the hidden messages, the aesthetically conditioning motifs and politically conditioning motifs that come across in this very ubiquitous genre, this media. But many writers in the past have dealt with this, albeit they've left out the occult tradition. What you're going to be hearing today is a combination of two particular pieces of information, two studies, which have long been disconnected. In your own country, you've had Marshall McLuhan talk about the powers of suggestion used by the media. You've had Vance Packard and Brian Wilson Key doing some fine work. Gene Kilborn, the activist, all authored people. And more recently, Douglas Rushkoff, doing wonderful work. And I started doing this work when I was 13 in Ireland. Long time interest in the occult, coming from many generations back, but also an interest in art, an interest in symbolism. And I didn't know that in my life there was going to be a convergence of these two realities. It took time. It didn't happen right away. It was only actually when I came across the work of Jordan Maxwell that suddenly I understood what I'd been seeing all the time, that this was more than just skulls and ice cubes. Because why would they be there? We have a connection between aesthetics, the portrayal in art, the portrayal in advertising, and an occult agenda. Very hard to accept for some, but we hope to prove the point tonight. The Western world in general, and America, is what I call symbol illiterate. What you're going to see tonight is a small window into a concept that I've taught for years, taught children especially, and it's just symbol literacy, which is learning about how the universal creator, or the universal presence, the universal intelligence, speaks to us daily. It speaks in symbols, not words. It was so important for the hegemonic authorities and patriarchal bastions to get us off the track of dealing with symbol literacy, that even in the Bible, at the creation of Christianity, before thou shalt not kill, before that edict in the Decalogue, you have this particular commandment, which is thou shalt not make for yourself a graven image or a symbol. It was more important to them than thou shalt not kill. And we're going to find out why. It has to do with the brain and moving us into what's called a left brain type of thought, a left brain type of cognition, a left brain type of expression, away from the right brain holotropic concept, which was more common to our forefathers. But thou shalt make no graven images. What are the ancient world covered in? What is Egypt covered in? Is graven images of God, graven images of divinity. It was absolutely natural to our forefathers to do so, to portray divinity, to portray the mysteries of being in symbolism. It became a very different edict in the Bible where it says, first came the Word. In the beginning was the Word. Well, I take exemption to that. I'm sorry. No, in the beginning does not come the Word of God. In the beginning comes the image of God. Or Goddess, if you want to be actually pedantic about it. But let's leave that aside for now. I work with the tarot and the divination, which is the archive of knowledge, the Gnostic core of the great book of symbolism. The greater book of symbolism, the tarot, these are the main chapters. Anyone who wants to get symbol literate, because Mircea Eliade, Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung have gone blue in the face asking us to get symbol literate, to become aware of how symbols are used, because they take the soul up. By being aware of how symbols work, and art, and imagination, we evolve spiritually. But that which can also help you evolve can also help you devolve, can also help you be enslaved. So the tarot and these great ancient Gnostic canon truths that were laid down by our forefathers were done mostly in symbols, the richness of symbolisms, and we teach this. In the occult tradition, it is essential that people become familiar with the role of symbolism and numbers and vibration and so on. One little aside, but connecting very much to what you've heard in other days here, is an interesting fact that what they call the Bible, let's say the Old Testament specifically, the 5 books of the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, are based on the Torah. They'll admit that. You ask anybody who's in the know and they go, oh yes, of course we can accept that the Pentateuch originated with the Hebrew Torah. But what these people will die before they will admit, or tell you, is that the Torah originates from the tarot. We haven't got time to explore this, but this is irrefutable if you do your homework and go to the reference works. In fact, it's the same word. The word is identical. But the difference is that the Bible and the Torah are communicated in words. Right? Words. The tarot communicates in symbols. And that's where the big problem is. Because you can argue till the cows come home about a particular statement, because now you have a language barrier and you have an interpretation barrier. Well, look, in symbolism, red is red, a sphinx is a sphinx. There's no argument about it. But when it comes to a written terminology, that's when the blood starts flowing. And that was the intention. In ancient medieval art, all the way down from the earliest times, we have symbols coming out of the occult world. We're finding them in the scriptures, finding them in religion. The crucifixion of Jesus, the crucifixion of St. Peter. The entire Bible can be decoded using aesthetic principles alone, or astrotheological motifs, cosmological motifs. The image on the right, for people who do not know, is one of the cards of the tarot, the hanged man. Well, didn't Jesus hang on a tree? Didn't Odin, in the Scandinavian myths, hang under a tree? Didn't Buddha get enlightened under a tree? Didn't Conan the Barbarian get crucified on a tree? I mean, we're seeing this motif all over the place. And science, which has always been doing catch-up anyway to what the mystics have been saying for aeons, but finally they're doing catch-up, and that's wonderful. They've just found that, in fact, symbols are important because, as you see here, it says that there are 240,000 miles of neural threads in the human brain, enough to stretch from Earth to the Moon. On every micrometer of these threads, there exists 250,000 units of information. But this data is recorded only as pictograms, only as composite images, and not as words. That's right. The universal intelligence, our phylogenetic race memory of every experience that our forefathers have had, is encoded in the brain, encoded in our DNA, in symbolism, in symbols, composite images. And today we find ourselves in a world replete with symbolism, images. We become deadened to it because it's so pervasive, in fact. We have the symbols of religion being denigrated by the corporate world. Powerful ancient symbols that we've associated with spiritual uplift are now being used for a different agenda. Jeremy Campbell, in his fine book, says, one important property of language is that while its symbols may be used to bring about physical results in the real world of substance, they need not be used for that purpose. Symbols can be decoupled from physical reality to a greater or lesser extent. Words are not deeds, though they often lead to deeds. Symbols can be manipulated to form new statements and expressions which are only tentative, playful, figurative. Symbols are at liberty to be a little irresponsible and experimental. Now that's a very loaded comment there. In 1835, we have the historian de Tocqueville, in his review of America, and in review of the genres that were going on of his time, wrote these words. He said, I fear that the productions of the democratic poets may often be surcharged with immense and incoherent imagery, with exaggerated descriptions and strange creations, and that the fantastic beings of their brain may sometimes make us regret the world of reality. In 1830,